Some weeks leadership feels less like steering a ship and more like bailing water with a coffee mug. If you are carrying a team, a target, and quietly your own exhaustion, you're not alone, my friend. We are not romanticizing grind. We are building an operating system that raises the bar and lowers the heart rate. Welcome back, listeners, to this episode of the BizBlend podcast. I'm Sana, and our guest has helped scale through hypergrowth, led dozens of acquisitions and exits, and he still shows up with a servant leader mindset that turns chaos into cadence. No theory, just scar tissue and systems, weekly rhythms that protect energy, decision rights that cut politics, trauma-aware practices that create safety, and AI workflows that actually move the P&L. So if you lead people or you want to lead yourself better, this one's for you. Breathe. Let's build something sustainable, listeners. And listeners, meet my incredible guest, Kurt Uhlir. So Kurt, welcome to the show, and it is really an honor to have you here with us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Okay. So first of all, when I was going through the intro, I think one particular phrase really like connected with me, and that this is something that I've also learned through doing so many shows on BizBlend. Servant leadership operating system, Kurt. So when you say that, what are the non-negotiable components, like the weekly cadence or the decisions, the feedback loops, like you would like to install in the first 30 days?
Yeah, there's 5 real things that I would walk through that are big parts for my kind of calm execution operating system. The first step for implementing with everybody actually isn't even in that operating system. It's making sure everybody in the company, whether that's a large enterprise company or for small SMBs, that they all understand what servant leadership means. Because I think too many people complicate leadership. And for me, it's actually very simple. There's either authoritative leadership, which at the end of the day is do what I say, how I say it, usually in the time frame that I want, or you're going to be fired. And the second is, takes the approach that says the moment I hire you, I've actually not hired you to do tasks. I've hired you to help me reach a business outcome, at which point then my job shifts to how can I help serve you to help me reach the business outcomes that I want. And I think too many people overcomplicate that. And so that's kind of the first bit before I would even get into those 5 steps of that kind of operating system. We can talk through the operating system, but for me, things really come down to decision rights. Who has the ability to make decisions in a company? Making sure we all kind of work through no surprise communication. I find surprises tend to bring emotions when they don't need to be. Emotions are okay, but not when they come on all of a sudden. Cross-functional pipelines, more important, I think, actually in smaller teams than for big enterprises where things may be a little bit more defined. Using your calendar as a strategy would be number 4. And then the 5th thing for me comes down to scoreboards that actually move behavior, because behavior is going to lead to outcomes.
First of all, thank you for sharing that, Kurt. I think 2 things here. So number 1 is one thing which I think many of the first-time founders, they kind of, unintentionally ignore because, let's admit it, it's just a lot of hustle in there and it's quite challenging initially. And this is something that, I've actually got to hear from so many guests, that there's no clarity on the structuring, specifically when it comes to the decision rights. And that's something that really, I would specifically take away from all the 5 components here. And the last one, which you mentioned, the essence or the value of it not being an operating system, but it coming from a more like an intentional POV, that instead of just giving a task and managing the output or checking the output, you are actually working, with the founder or the business owner to help the business grow, not just get the output done. So I think that is something. Do you think it is possible across all the sizes of businesses, like in large company also, or maybe in a startup or a medium business, or it depends on the leader?
It doesn't depend on the leader as much. I mean, it depends on the leader only in that whether you're the boss or the manager, or whether the person that's being led, those individual contributors. They I find we all come with the trauma from bad bosses, maybe from bad parents, or from a company that we worked on with that may not operate the way we'd like. To your point, there's a lot of ambiguity in companies, and so especially when you're trying to instill initially, like, the concept of who has the responsibility for making decisions, and how does that change over time. You can say things verbally to people, but that's going to be interpreted from the filter of the person you're saying it to, and from your own experience as well. And so it usually comes down to me, it's not so much the size of the company as acknowledging that we all have baggage. Like, we're all going to catch a plane or a bus, and we're carrying that suitcase with us. But that suitcase, in the leadership world, is filled with all the interactions that we've had or that our employees have had in their past. And that's just coming along with them, whether they like it or not. But people are usually, especially at smaller businesses, they have not taken the time to think about what they've actually hired people to do and what they want. I was speaking with somebody a couple weeks ago that owns a pretty large lawn care business here in the United States. And so, like, the approach that he takes is, like, he usually has 1 to 2 person teams that will go out to mow lawns, trim bushes and whatnot at people's houses. Well, I asked him what's different from how he manages his teams versus others. And he said, well, the smaller companies, and how he started was, he said, they hire somebody to make sure that they go out and mow those lawns in the smallest amount of time usually, and to get into the next thing. And he thought about it, and he said, that's not actually what I want, because he thinks about how often customers churn out of businesses like that. And so when he sends out that 1 person or 2 person team, he points out that, hey, I'm sending you out to mow their lawn to see if maybe there's other business we could upsell as well. But the first thing that I want is, I want you to leave that person, if you have any engagement with them or you see them in any way, I want you to leave them with a smile, and for them to be happy that we have shown up that day. Well, that starts to change then a little bit. So what that looks like is, whether and he also gives them the same flexibility for decisions of, hey, I want you to look for opportunities with neighbors where you might be able to have a positive engagement with them that you might not otherwise do that. Well, now he has people that otherwise would be, driving a lawnmower and a truck around, and instead they're making sure to knock on the door and say, hey, we're here. I just wanted to see if there's anything else you need from us today. And sometimes they'll take trash cans down to the street if it's time for the trash to get picked up. And they take that extra little bit of time, and they have almost no customers leave them, because the person that's showing up, they've given them the responsibility of saying, your job is to make sure this person is happy. And then because as they're more blue collar workers, they don't expect them to enter things into like a CRM, but they have a system in place where they can text a voice note back to the office and just say, hey, here's what I saw, or here's what's going on with that customer. And so, like, they also, because they do that, they engage and find out, oh, they have a spouse that's going through a medical issue. Well, they just kind of make note of it, and then the office can decide, do they do something else sent out?
Definitely. And also another interesting component of the non-negotiables here. So, which you mentioned is, and I'm really, really interested to know, is the scoreboard as per the behavior. If I'm right in there, what exactly is that? Like, how do we create something like that? Good.
Yeah, great question. So I generally work with middle market size software companies. And so they're going to have a customer success team. And so, those are the people that are responsible with making sure people, know how have been trained on the software, that they're maybe looking for upsell opportunities. They're usually, those companies will fold in support into that customer success team as well. Well, I'll go into a lot of the companies and I look to see what the dashboards are that they have, and what they're tracking is they're trying to optimize for the smallest amount of time that a ticket stays open. And so I stepped in a company that the investors brought me in. We ended up selling it to a mid-market company that I stayed at for a number of years. Well, when I came in, that was their goal. They wanted the smallest amount of time from initial response, and then the smallest amount of time that a ticket could be opened. Well, I started running some reports and I went, wait a second. I'm seeing that like the number of tickets you all have from an individual customer basis is like 5 times the number that I would expect it to be. And when you start to dig into and you look at what those tickets are, people were being scored on, and they were actually being compensated on having those tickets close quickly, but they weren't solving people's problems. The onboarding side of customer success, they were trying to get through webinars and demos and initial training sessions fast, as opposed to making sure that people understood. And so the initial thing I did, I actually just broke their entire customer success dashboard. I said, I don't care. Tickets could stay open for 2 years for all I care. I want to make sure problems are solved. And so we did come back in, but what we ended up coming back in was to track to see from the customer success side, were people actually using the software? Were they getting the value that they had been sold that they could be done out of it? Now, support tickets are part of that, and trainings are part of that, but the goal isn't to close a ticket. The goal is to solve a problem, and actually to make sure that the customer is getting value out of it, that's the reason they're paying for it. I mean, nobody wants software. They want some solution done out of it. Well, it's the same thing if it's a small, SMB, whether it's mowing lawns or something else.
That is actually very interesting. And this is sometimes, it becomes quite a low-hanging fruit in there, because the front facing or the sales team is very aggressive, and, they are meeting their numbers. They are actually closing deals in there. But I think this particular exercise example that you gave, I think it also directly contributes to the LTV, the retention, and the clients, the people who are using your software as a solution, becoming your advocates. So yeah, that's very, very apt example in here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a hard balance sometimes especially for small businesses, if they're on the, say, consulting side, if they're building websites or doing marketing work or freelance consulting work, because you generally want to charge for your hours and things. And I always encourage people, don't charge for your hours, charge for the value that you're giving. But to your point, I want raving fans out of my customers. I mean, there's always somebody, whether locally or especially globally, that will undercut you from a price perspective. And so that's never a place you want to be in. What you're looking for is somebody came to you to build them a website, and what are they wanting out of that? Now, there are cases, in the case of, say, a small, 1 to 5 person website design company, there are people that need a website as just kind of a quote business card website. Doesn't need to have much functionality. That's very different than knowing what that customer is wanting to say, oh, are they wanting to drive leads, or are they wanting to have content that they can send out to people to stay top of mind? Or is it something like real estate in the United States where there's going to be very complicated data feeds behind there? So you do have to segment your customers, but it's understanding they may have come to you for the product, but what are they trying to do with it?
Good. Okay. And Kurt, now let's bring in the energy and safety here. Suppose it's the human aspects, as people say in business. Now, high performers, they burn bright and then they burn out. What signals tell you a team needs trauma-aware practices before performance slips?
Yeah, there's several things that I kind of bring in there. The first is, I really believe in kind of the concept of trust contracts. And so, I mean, many companies, if not most, will have, on their website somewhere, here's the cultural values that they claim to have. But if you go sit in and you listen to their meetings or you listen to the one-on-ones, the behavior of people does not match what's on the website. And so, I was at this mid-market software company, and so I spoke as I came onto the C-suite team, and I knew as part of the interviewing and joining them that I was going to align with people on how they would choose to lead. So I wrote out for things on the website without reviewing with anyone. Here's how we expect people to behave. This is who we hire. And not from a cultural perspective, like, hey, would we like to all hang out after work? But things that you would see in people's actions. And so some of the things that were on there, we expect people to have we expect people to have healthy conflict. We want them to push towards, I'd rather you make a decision than sit and wait for somebody else. So if you're trying to get approval from me and I'm not available, well, then you need to make the decision for the customer and just move forward. And so when you start to put in place some of those things, it's not just enough to put it on the website. So as part of everybody's onboarding, and we would keep reminding people at our team meetings to say, hey, this is not just activities from a trust perspective that we expect to see from you. This is what you should expect to see from your boss and everybody above you. And if you are not experiencing these things in the actions that you see from them, you can use what's on the website to call us out about that. And here's how. And if you've gone to your boss about it, and they're not pointing out with, like, we'll stay with the healthy conflict one, because a lot of times people don't have healthy conflict. Well, then here's how you can go into the organization to bring that up, because we're trying to coach people to have that healthy contact. And so that's part of establishing the trust. Another part with that would be, like, we'll stay with healthy conflict, is actually having both you may build it into the program of one-on-ones and team meetings, but kind of walking people through training how to have healthy dissent. And so, like, what's a ritual? How in a big meeting or small meeting, and sometimes it may differ depending on the person, how can they say that they disagree or that they have a different idea? Or one of the things that I'm really big on is, especially from people that are individual contributors in companies that are talking to the customers, because they usually have the best feel for what's going on, but they may not be able to articulate in the way that a boss could. And so we put in place rituals that says, hey, like at the end of the meetings or on one-on-ones, we usually have a question, something like, hey, do you have a gut feeling for anything that's not going right? For you, for other people on the team, or for our customers. And we kind of give them the disclaimer every time. You don't have to, you could be wrong, but if you have a feeling, I just want to know what the feeling is and articulate it the best way that you can. And so that's the rituals we put in place so that people feel safe doing it. But then you have to follow up on that, especially on team meetings. So it's easier for small businesses, because if you have like a 3 to 5 person team, you all are talking all the time. You just have to be intentional on when somebody comes to you with healthy dissent on that, with healthy conflict, you need to come back and speak very highly of that person, and bringing up how especially usually if they were wrong on something, I won't bring it up as an example, but I'll bring up, hey, when they pointed out something that wasn't going well within an operating system in the company, or something we were doing with a customer, and they pushed back on me, or they pushed back on their boss on it, we want to make sure we reward that behavior. And so I'll do micro rewards from a monetary perspective, or gifts, and I'll send dinner to that person and their family so that they actually feel it. But I want to make sure everybody on the team sees that, because we all have that PTSD from working for bad bosses. And so even though you may say these things, if you're not coming back and speaking highly of people that push back on you in a good way, well, nobody's going to believe you on that. Especially if you were really thoughtful of, this is the direction we needed to go, and say Amanda on the team pointed out that this wasn't going to work well with customers, and she has a feeling for that, and so you did it her way. Well, pointing out that to your team, whether it's a 3-person team or a 300-person team, that I was going to do A, she talked me into B, and B was the right way. That's pointing out that, hey, you might be wrong, and that you and the company will be better by people coming up with those ideas. So at least so you can discuss them.
Definitely. I think once again, it comes back to the decision rights, that structuring. And secondly, um, I think, sometimes bringing in the concept of um, trauma awareness or safety, especially within teams, it kind of, is interpreted as this discussion around soft skills, or more towards the human aspect, because business is all about numbers and targets and revenue and profit. But I think that, this, what you shared, it goes in for um, safety, but not from a fluff point of view. That um, there is a healthy conflict. Even if, you are, maybe you are saying that incorrectly, or something that you would like to share and is not, not favorable, but it's unpleasant. Um, you are actually, the manager or the boss is actually connecting with you, interacting with you, and giving you that guidance that, whatever you said, it is unpleasant, but let me help you with that as well. So there's accountability, but then it's not like, just throwing away and just, shouting or having some aggressive conversations, kind of a punishment in there. So I think this definitely calls for a balance in there.
Absolutely. And to your point, it both is acknowledging that, hey, there's another person on the side of that conversation, if you're the boss, but it's also acknowledging, which is why I like the servant leadership versus authoritative leadership, is especially if it's let's just even stay with that lawn care business, where it's like the friend that I was talking to, I mean, he has about 100 people that work that work in his company full time, and not to counting some contractors. So that's a pretty decent sized organization. So for him, and even the level 1 or 2 underneath him, he could think he's trying to make all the decisions possible, but how many different decisions does the person who's driving the truck and showing up to mow somebody's lawn, like how many decisions does that person actually make that the both his boss and my friend that's the owner of the company, that they never know about? And not just like directions of driving the vehicle, but the tons of things. And so it's acknowledging that not only is there another person on the side, but that person has information, especially information from interactions with customers, that I would never have as the boss who's sitting in the office. And so if you stay with that lawn care business, well, one of the ways you might know that somebody was going to churn is they might start to notice that the house is starting to get into disrepair. Or maybe there's upsell opportunities with a partner where, hey, it's starting to look like maybe they're going to need their house painted, or their gutters need to be cleaned. Well, maybe your company could do the gutters, but you don't paint houses. Well, by starting to look for those things, only the person that's interacting with the customer is going to have some of that information. And so, acknowledging that from a leader and boss perspective, not only could they have good ideas, but they have data that I'm not going to have about our customers unless I make sure that it's a safe environment for them to share them, and or I provide some way for them to actually communicate that. As I mentioned, like, hey, we all know, even in technology companies, most people don't like filling in things in a CRM. It's one of the nice things about AI right now is, it'll listen to meetings, it'll transcribe things, but being able to allow somebody just to do a voice note and send it off, and it goes into the systems and they don't have to worry about it. Like that's easy things to do. You just have to put in place the workflows.
Yeah. And I think, born from this is a culture, especially for startups or small and medium businesses. I think these are so fundamental components of the workplace culture that we, always kind of talk about. And I think this is getting so much relevance right now. People are actually not looking at, um, how good the company is, or about the stock values and, the brand name, but they're more looking into the company culture, the workplace culture. So these are really, really some fundamental components. They become the building blocks. They become the blueprint in there.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of data that talks about people will take lower compensation for certain like flexibility in the hours they can work and days that they come in the office. And I think at a certain level that comes into play, but especially for people at a lot of small businesses, the people that are working, especially like blue collar businesses, cleaning businesses and whatnot, like the people that are working there, like they need to work as many hours as they can, a lot of times, but they're still going to, I want people not just to show up at the company to kind of put in the minimum amount of hours and the minimum amount of effort. I want them to feel like, hey, we actually have their back. Hey, we're actually managing the company in a way so that if things slow down, we won't have to just lay them off. And so, like having that servant approach, and from a culture perspective, has people thinking through that. Hey, my boss, the owner of this company, or the owners in the company, if there's investors, that they actually care for us, and that's actually really easy from a business perspective too, because like it doesn't have to be just a feel good thing. Like I think about things where, like, yes, at the end of the day, I do need every single member of the company I'm at to be productive. But the question then everybody needs to ask themselves is how productive do you need them to be over what time frames? And so, it's one thing if somebody has a sick kid or a sick spouse, and so they're maybe they're not going to be able to come into work, or their productivity is not going to be as good for this week. Well, that's a small thing. If they're a high performer, you may not think about that. Well, what if they got thrust into elder care? So I had one of the best product managers I've ever had just almost disappear. And it was like 4 or 5 days in, and I kind of reach out to him and I'm like, what's going on? Didn't hear anything. So finally I follow up, and it's like that. We have to talk. They're like, there's a problem here. And like, it's a job problem if we're not going to talk. Well, as we started talking, he got thrust into elder care. So one parent had passed, and so got instantly thrust into Alzheimer's, and was trying to figure that out. Well, if I looked at just his productivity over the course of 2 weeks, maybe even up to 2 months, he was nowhere near as productive. I mean, like he was 20 to 30% of as effective as he normally was during, say, that 2-month time period. He was still better. He was still almost on average from a product manager, because he was a really high performer. If I looked at his results over the year, like from when that happened from the next 12 months, he was still probably one of the best top 3 product managers I had ever had. And so by stepping in and forcing the healthy conflict that said, hey, something's going wrong, he was just scared because he was trying to figure things out. So I was like, well, instantly, you're not going to do anything for the next couple of days just to try to figure this out. There's no point in treading water. We can cover that. But I need you to come in with a plan that has as much flexibility as possible. And so with that, he was still able to be productive, and it shortened the amount of time that both he was able to help his father as well as and get back to work, but also he felt better. There was less stress from there. And so from a business perspective, I did need him to perform, but I was building a big company at the time. So yeah, if he was less productive for 60 days, I could deal with that. If it had been 6 years, well, that's going to have to be a different kind of conversation. But that's why you have to have those conversations and think about, like, yes, as an individual, you may have a heart for helping the person, but at the end of the day, the company has to make money and profit to be able to provide for people. And so as long as you're talking through with them about what that looks like, well, then they're okay coming to you and saying, hey, this is going on in my life, or this is happening even in work or with conflict with someone else. And you can help deal with those ebbs and flows and efficiency.
You know what, Kurt? I believe that still, I don't know the latest, kind of shift, but this is something that, for me, a few years back would be too good to be true. But I'm really, really glad to know that, there's still, especially at the leadership levels, people out there are who would not just have a very tunnel vision in terms of when it comes to any specific employee, especially, who has been a brilliant contributor or a good performer, but maybe due to some personal or any kind of, problems out there, he or she couldn't be able to perform as per the expectations. And people are there to help them out or collaborate or, work out some kind of plan which works not only in favor of the person, but also for the business as well. That's something I feel Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, like, so I do a lot of keynote talks on servant leadership around the world. And so I do find that when an event or a company will bring me in, it tends to fall into two very different approaches to how they would prefer that talk to happen. One is kind of from the moral or it's just the right thing to do perspective. And that's okay. And those companies are usually performing pretty well from a margin and revenue perspective to have that kind of margin. The other side is people say, hey, I've heard some of your talks where you just come in with the numbers. And like I've kind of come into people, I'm like, if you gave me $10 million to go start a new company or $50 million for part of a venture capital raise, by far, me implementing a high-performing servant leadership approach is going to grow the company faster with more resilience than taking that authoritative leadership perspective. So like all of the numbers back that up. And I've done it repeatedly on things, but it does take changing people's viewpoints to saying this, like most people, you can walk them through that business case. I mean, I've written this, like 9,000 word article on my website that's an ebook that's been downloaded like 250,000 times, just called The Business Case for Servant Leadership. And because it literally just kind of walks through what we just talked about. That was like, hey, at the end of the day, you need people to perform, but it's not about getting them to perform just for a week. Like you're building a company. The company's not going to disappear at the end of the quarter. Unfortunately, too many managers do try to run things, and too many companies compensate people just based on hitting quarterly numbers. And so that goes back to that dashboard we had before about what you're tracking, what you're rewarding people on, that's what most people are going to perform to. And so I really do like privately held companies, mid-market companies where they'll put in place compensation packages almost for everybody a lot of times where, yeah, there's the cash bit that everybody needs, but there's going to be things tied to long-term value. Because, I mean, I've worked at companies too, and it's no problem. But when the investors say, the only thing we care about is getting this $25 million a year company to a $50 million a year company to be able to sell it within the next 24 months. Okay, like they're clear. They have zero value beyond that. They just want to be able to hit enough numbers to be able to sell it. And one of those is we need it to be at a $50 million a year run rate. Okay, they're very clear. That's actually really good to manage, but then we get to tell that to as many people as we can in the company. We're not building long-term momentum. We're doing everything we can towards that.
Exactly. And although we're short on time, but because you had mentioned AI, I would just like to bring in, how, like, where do AI-enabled workflows actually reduce cycle time? Like, how do you prove it on the P&L?
Yeah, so a lot of it is on if it's kind of grunt work and repetitious, that's where it does help a lot. I mean, I've played around with N8N and other things, and I mean, so much. I mean, I think we've all seen is the hype doesn't necessarily live up to what we see in reality. And so I need a lot more people involved in it. But it changes who I'm hiring now. Like if I'm hiring somebody to help write content for my marketing team, well, I'm not hiring junior writers at this point because I have a lot of AI tools that can help. So I'm going to hire people that are more editors and managers. But in any position, even office managers at this point, I'm hiring people less for the specific skills they have today. Instead, I'm hiring people because I need people that'll help me build the workflows. We talked about like the person talking to customers, the person doing the work is often going to have more insight into what could be automated. And then I can help them figure that out, automate that. And so I want people that are systems thinker, people that are data literate. Like they don't have to know how to build a dashboard, but they can understand numbers and data if I give it to them. And the third thing is I want people that are really comfortable with change, both change that they'll bring change into what they're doing, but they're also very comfortable with me bringing in change to them. And so if we say like that content manager team, like I was at a mid-market company and literally I spent like 80 to 85% of my time just trying to mad scientist what this 30-person content team I was doing for an entire quarter. And they knew it. And it was like, they were performing really well. They wrote like 7 million words of human written AI enhanced content. And they would ask me, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to completely mad scientist stuff that will change everything you all do in your day-to-day activity. And you'll know when it's done because I'll come to you with a new workflow.
Wow. Brilliant, good. Brilliant. And before we wrap up, if our listeners, they would like to connect with you, what would be the best way?
My personal website, Kurt Uhlir, UHLIR.com, or you can just search for Kurt Servant Leadership and Google will take you to my website.
Brilliant. So listeners, what I'll do for you is I'll have all the details in the show notes. So just refer to them along with this episode on whichever platform you listen to your podcast to, and let's try to land this gently. Leadership isn't a cape, it is a cadence. And today, in this conversation, we mapped an operating system that respects both outcomes and oxygen, clear decision rights, weekly rhythms that guard energy, trauma-aware habits that keep talent whole, WHOLE, and AI that earns its seat by shrinking time to value. If you felt seen, good. If you felt challenged, even better. So, Kurt, thank you so much for this really, really insightful conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the BizBlend. Until next time, this is Neil Sana signing off. Thank you.